Hello, welcome to Three Count Commentaries. I am your host, MagMongoSlade. Today we're going to talk about Vince McMahon under the Department of Justice investigation. Um, oh, brother. So Deadline put out an article about this whole thing, and we're going to go through that. That's going to be our video today. I really don't have much else to discuss on the subject. So what ended up happening is the Department of Justice stepped in and requested that Janelle Grant pause her lawsuit while they investigate for crimes. Um, and we're gonna go through this because we want to get a little bit more detail. So it says in a sealed filing today, the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York presented material to the federal court of a probe that they have into the disgraced McMahon, World Wrestling Entertainment, and WWE's ex-head of talent relations, John Laurinaitis. This has now put a stay on the explosive case from former WWE staffer Janelle Grant. It says, and we're going to skip ahead a little bit. That pause could last several months, I hear. A separate filing Thursday from the U.S. Attorney Damian Williams' office made it pretty clear that the government is not dipping its toe in these potentially toxic waters. It's not just dipping its toe in these potentially toxic waters. It says, it's a quote here. It says, in addition to the counsel already of record, please enter my appearance as counsel for the United States of America, Sarah Mortazavi, Assistant United States Attorney Williams wrote today to Judge Jeffrey A. Meyer in a document also placed in the docket. The U.S. Attorney's Office of the Empire State Southern District declined to comment or offer guidance when contacted by Deadline today. If and when that changes, this post will be updated. Let's move forward. Ann Callis, the attorney for Janelle Grant, put out a statement saying Ms. Grant has consented to a request by the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York to stay her case against Mr. McMahon, WWE, and John Laurinaitis, pursuant to a pending non-public investigation. We will cooperate with all appropriate next steps. McMahon's lawyer sidestepped the footprint in the case by the DOJ. We remain confident the evidence will prove Mrs. Grant's allegations are false, and her complaint is nothing more than a fabricated vindictive narrative from a disgruntled former girlfriend, asserted Jessica Rosenberg. I'm not going to go into the Vince McMahon Janelle Grant situation because we've gone over that 100 times before. So we're not going to go through that. But that's pretty much what's going on here. But I will say this, and it needs to be said, and it must be said. This Department of Justice investigation likely has nothing to do with sex trafficking, rape, or anything else. Why do I say that? Well, I looked up the people who are filed the appearance. That's what I did. United States Attorney Damian Williams is an economist from the Southern District of New York. He's a Biden appointee, and he prosecutes primarily financial corruption. The judge, Jeffrey Allen, or is it Alker Meyer, is focused mostly on regulatory crimes. So this is likely some kind of securities fraud that they've been investigating. And the weird thing about this is he's been under investigation for this for 2 years. There's stories going back to what was this, July of 2022, about the Wall Street in the Wall Street Journal, and saying that Vince has been under some kind of investigation by the Department of Justice for 2 years now. So I know a lot of people are thinking that this has something to do with sex trafficking and rape and all that kind of stuff, but no, it doesn't. These are people who are involved with, sure, it's criminal, but these are involved with securities and stock and financial crimes. So Remember, a while back, we considered and thought that maybe he would get indicted on embezzlement, which I guess is becoming more and more of a possibility. And we see how New York behaves if you've been paying attention to the media the last couple of hours. But I don't know why they would ask her to pause her lawsuit for this, but it's it's that's what's going on. And who knows how long this investigation is going to last, but it's been going on for 2 years already. I know there's a lot of people who have ideas that, Vince is going to go to jail and all this kind of stuff, and he might. We don't know. New York is there's just no way of knowing because of how corrupt that state is. And it's not just because of what happened today. It's just New York is traditionally corrupt. A lot of big city political governments are very, very corrupt. But if they want to dedicate enough time and energy into it, they can find him guilty of jaywalking if they want to. But I would imagine, since they have confiscated a lot of his computers and different things like that, I think they've taken like mirrors of his phone and all kinds of stuff over the last 2 years. They have a lot of information, you know, to begin an investigation. It's not a public investigation, so that ought to be interesting about what they actually intend to look for. But just looking at the names involved, we're talking mostly financial crimes. This doesn't mean that he's off the hook for anything. It just means he's on the hook for other things. We know that this guy's been sued a bunch for financial crimes. But this whole Wall Street Journal blow up in 2022 was about financial crimes in the first place because it was all about where the money came from. Did the money come from the company and he was improperly using the corporation's money, or was he using his own personal money? The corporation, WWE, investigated and found that he was paying out of his own pocket, but it was money that was that the payouts were in some ways beneficial to the company and should have been uh, counted as in their records and accounting. So we'll see what actually spills out of this thing, but it's going to be an interesting couple of days, well, months. Who knows how long this investigation is going to last? And it doesn't end anything that he's got going on with Janelle Grant. It just kind of puts a stop to it for a short amount of time. Now, WrestleNomics, to continue along this same topic, which is Vince McMahon and legal things, they did some digging. In WrestleNomics, they do a good job sometimes, and this time they found something that was very intriguing. They said that a PR representative for Janelle Grant is a former Trump administration communications aide. I don't know what this means, and I don't think it cares. I don't think I care, but let's see what pops up. It says Janelle Grant is represented by a public relations firm, the Agency Group, or TAG. Carolina Hurley is one agent prominently working with Grant during her sex trafficking lawsuit against Vince McMahon, WWE, and John Laurinaitis. Hurley formerly worked in the White House during Donald Trump's presidential administration as part of the White House Communications Office. Post Wrestling and WrestleNomics has learned. Hurley has worked with Grant throughout the lawsuit, which was filed on January 25th. It should have put 2024. Trump has been connected with McMahon family since the 1980s through the present. We confirm Hurley's work history with the Trump administration was known to Grant and her attorney, Ann Callis, before Hurley began representing Grant. Now, this is an interesting situation here because Ann Callis is a Democrat from Illinois, which means she's more than likely corrupt. Uh, and I think she's a former judge in Illinois, if I remember correctly. So We got interesting bedfellows here on the side for Janelle Grant, but they do two different things. You know, the attorney is there to advocate for her and to try to win her some money out of this thing, and the public relations firm is there to massage her image, which is no doubt going to be, I don't want to say assaulted, but let's say under attack. Even though I don't understand why she needs to have a public relations firm, considering she's not a public person. Well, I guess she is now because her name is in court documents, but it's not like she's going to be making public appearances or anything like that, or unless she is, she's going to pop up on the interview circuit or something like that. I don't know. But Ann Callis wrote to WrestleNomics and Post Wrestling saying Carolina disclosed the Trump connection before we hired Tag. Our team had confidence that her team, comprised of competent and experienced women, led by a woman with a stellar resume, was the optimum way to assist Janelle in getting her message across while dispelling all of the negative onslaught we knew was coming her way. So we got right-wing feminists here. You know, she has her team is comprised of competent, experienced women, not people, women. Now, here's why they ended up looking into it. They ended up looking into it because Tag is also connected with Logan Paul. That's an interesting bit here. It says, while it's not unusual for PR firms to handle a variety of clients, Tag also works with Prime Energy. The energy drink brand associated with Logan Paul announced a sponsorship with WWE in March for Prime's logo to appear on WWE ring canvas during premium live events. So, according to Brandon Thurston, this is what got their attention is they were watching the Saudi show and noticed that the Prime logo was not there, and they wanted to try to figure out why. And they think this might be the reason, even though, again, the tag has been with Janelle Grant since the beginning, and the Prime sponsorship began in what, March? So that means they were already 2 months into this thing before Prime even got on the WrestleMania canvas. I don't think that has anything to do with it. It might be something else, but so far I'm only seeing relationship stuff. I'm not saying that this is impacting anything. Just kind of a hey, heads up, this person used to work for this person, which to me is not very interesting. But I'll keep going through this. Keep talking about Vince McMahon and Donald Trump's connection, even though both sides say they haven't been talking recently. Um, but of course, Linda still works there, so they're discussing that. Um, it says in 2022, WWE investigated multiple non-disclosure agreements Vince McMahon made. He agreed to pay a total of $14.6 million to 4 different women. Yada yada yada. We already know about that. Mr. McMahon's public relations representative is Michael Citrick from Citrick and Company, which we reported in April. McMahon's attorney in the Grant lawsuit is Jessica T. Rosenberg. Let me go back to Citrick and Company because I believe this is the same people they said was connected to Harvey Weinstein. Which is, do I see that here? Let's see. I'm looking. Sorry. Hey, how y'all guys doing? While I'm looking, I'm gonna try not to keep dead air. Hola, Jumbo Habarigani. That's what we got going on here. So it says in the past, Citrick and Company has handled cases involving Hulk Hogan and Steve Austin. Although the specifics of the work performed for the wrestling stars he couldn't recall when speaking with us on the phone. Citrick couldn't disclose the cost of his services. A 2019 feature in the Columbia Journal Review reported that his firm's fee was $1,100 per hour. Citrick says he's also taken on several cases on a pro bono basis. It is unknown what the financial agreement is regarding McMahon. Well, it's probably not pro bono, which means free. Not likely you're going to do all that stuff for free. It's not free. It's somewhere between $1,100 per hour and free. I would imagine it's on the higher end. So It doesn't say, but I do believe this is supposedly the guy that was working with Harvey Weinstein, even though it's not here. Yeah, here it is. It's in the comments. One of the guys in the comment section said. So we got, Trump stuff all over the place, which I know is their favorite subject nowadays. But it's on both sides now. You got a former Trump aide involved with this whole thing. So it ought to be very, very interesting going forward. Should Vince be concerned about the Department of Justice snooping around, the financial implications of all the hush money stuff? Well, yes, absolutely. He should be more worried about that than the uh the lawsuit, if we're being honest. Because the lawsuit is just civil. It's going to cost him more money, which he got plenty of money. That's not a problem. Here you're dealing with, the very corrupt state of New York, which might want to throw him in prison. Uh, so, and well, not I shouldn't say the state of New York. It's the federal government, but it's New York politicians and New York politics. So, it's an interesting bit. So that's pretty much what's going on. I know a lot of people are thinking that Vince is about to get wrapped up in this thing, but again, he's been under this investigation for 2 years, so it might just mean that they feel like they have something and have decided they want to try to pursue it. We'll see. And I'm telling you, it doesn't seem like Vince's attorneys care too much about the Federal Department of Justice investigation. Their focus is solely on this lawsuit, this sexual harassment lawsuit, or the sexual trafficking lawsuit. So that seems to be what's going on. I know you're probably going to hear a lot from a lot of people. Just, when you see these kinds of cases, all you got to do really is to Google the people involved. And you look up U.S. Attorney Damian Williams, and you see his background is in finance. And he prosecutes mostly financial and white-collar crimes. And the same thing with the judge, Jeffrey Meyer. Same thing, regulatory and financial crimes. So it's not going to be about sex crimes or rape or anything like that. But he's involved with so much that he's about to pay through the nose in legal costs, no matter what the outcome is going to be. Because they're coming at him from all sides. So him selling out and keeping all this liquid cash means he's ready to pay through the nose for this. So this is wild. Trump and Sonny both found guilty. Shaking my head. It's fascinating to WWE Hall of Famer convicted of criminal behavior. There's probably more than that, certainly more than that. Compared to the NFL Hall of Fame, though. Imagine the NBA Hall of Fame. How many people in there is felons, convicted felons. So that's the nature of the beast, brother. So that's the big story of the day. A smaller story, I guess you could say, is I guess my Booker T video got some legs to it because out of nowhere, just they talked about it on the Hall of Fame podcast that Booker T and his co-host was discussing the video, not my video, of course, because if it was my video, I'd probably be running up and down the street, super excited they were talking about me on the podcast. But it was a weird thing that all of a sudden Booker T is being asked about the WCW lawsuit and politicking and Rick Steiner and all this kind of stuff. Just so happened a couple of days after I put that video out, which featured the Rick Steiner video. So I'm going to try to find the audio of him talking about, and of course he denied it. I mean, which is what he was expecting to do. All right, here we go. Here we go.
Obviously, you're always encouraged to super chat in the ESPN 97 Rick Steiner, Hall of Famer.
Can you guys hear it?
Steiners are in the Hall of Fame. Yeah, they are actually. Yeah, they're in the Hall of Fame, and y'all wrestled quite a bit in WCW, and of course, Braun Breaker's doing great things in NXT now. He's the son of Rick Steiner. But there's an old clip that looked like from one of those shoot interviews that used to go on YouTube all the time, and they were asking Rick about you and about kind of y'all working together. And I won't play the clip, but I'll summarize.
I heard some of it.
You heard some of it. So the clip essentially said that, which was a little bit shocking for me to hear, knowing what I know about you and your career. The clip stated that, you politicked your way into the world title. You went to the NAACP and complained that there weren't any black champions, and you were part of a lawsuit or what have you.
I just now looked at the date. It was uploaded on May 11th. So what day did my video go up? Let's say I'm trying to film myself on this one, so y'all gonna have to give me a break. My video went up on the 17th. All right, so I guess he talked about it before. I thought my video was the reason they were talking about it, but instead it's the other way around. Unless I'm reading these numbers wrong. I don't know. Anyway, back to the thing.
And that's the only reason you ever became the world champion, because of politics. Now, again, I don't know if you ever had this conversation with Rick before or heard him say this, but I was kind of shocked to hear that. And I wanted to know kind of what did you think, not only about the clip, but is there any truth to the matter? Did you go to the NAACP or politic your way to the world title? That'd be news to me, is what I'm saying.
We went through this, so we know that Booker T himself was not involved with this, but I wanted to just play Booker T's response because my video did get some traction, and so I feel like people might want to hear Booker T's side of it, and I don't want to do a separate video just so he can deny it, because we already know that he denied it.
No, I don't think I was in a position in WCW to do any politic.
What do you mean by that?
Well, it was a good old boy clique in WCW. I mean, and I wasn't a part of the clique. I was a guy that was just working, and I was gonna, be there.
Now he said "good old boy clique," which makes it sound. I hate to say it makes it sound racist, but typically when people say it, when a thing is a good old boy clique, that's typically what they mean, is that there's, some racisms going on. But he's, I haven't listened to this clip in a couple hours, so I don't remember exactly where he's going with this. But when you say something is a good old boys club, that's typically what you mean.
Due to how good I performed in the ring, and that was pretty much it. I didn't have any friends. We didn't have, my brother and I, we didn't have any.
Carlos Bravo, thank you very much, sir. Please don't post.
Clicks. There was no buddy system for us, so I don't know how did I get in the politicking realm. I never went to the NAACP and pulled a race card. I was never part of any lawsuits ever in this business against any wrestling company. So I don't know where you got that information from. I always thought I was pretty tight with Rick Steiner. I never really. That's one of the reasons why I really never call guys friends. You hear me talk about that all the time. In this business, if you find a friend, it's a rarity. There's been a lot of guys that I've been associated with. We've been, co-workers. We've been,
Jeez. Jeez. I know his feelings are hurt that Rick Steiner would say that, because it would offend me too. It would upset me too, for sure. And for him to be so blatantly wrong, like clearly, and there's been people who have, I get attacked sometimes for my takes. You know, it happens. It comes with the job. I don't think I've ever come across so much negativity as, well, actually, I can't say that. There's probably been some videos where there's been more negative. I think some of my defenses of like Jackson Riker and all those kinds of people have been you know, more upsetting. But one of the most vociferous attacks that I faced was the Booker T lawsuit video. And in that video, nowhere did I say that Booker T was involved with the lawsuit. I mentioned the people who were involved. I said their names, for God's sake. And I never said Booker T was involved with it. What I said was Booker T, probably against his own will, was used to cover up for a racist lawsuit, against the racist lawsuit, the allegation. That's what I came to in terms of an answer when I looked into the subject. And I found that WCW had did something similar with Ron Simmons when they got sued. They decided to make Ron Simmons the world champion. And I just surmised that if they did it once and they did it twice, and that was it. I never said Booker T was involved with that. But a lot of people didn't listen to the video, or they didn't get all the way through it. And then all of a sudden they're like, you're what you're trying to do. You're trying to say Booker T wasn't great. I'm like, I didn't say none of that. I didn't say none of that. I just said he probably was used as a pawn against other people. That's what I'm saying. And there's no doubt. Even Rick Steiner himself said that Booker T deserved it. So nobody is saying that Booker T didn't deserve it. But there is a mix-up here where everybody is saying that Booker T was suing the company and all that, and he clearly wasn't.
Road buddies, whatnot like that. But as far as friends, I don't have a whole lot of friends in this business. Due to that right there, Scotty, I think me and Scott, are tight. Being former tag team champions together, as well as just having that camaraderie. It's never been a beef. It's never been a ego trip or any jealousy. With Scott and I. Remember the final night at WCW, and Scotty goes, what do you think they're gonna do, man? What's gonna happen? And I go, Scott, what are you thinking, man? We're the only two that can take. I'm like, what are you talking about? It's me and you. So now I don't know where stuff like that comes from. I don't know why someone, especially Rick, would say something like that. I was very, very braggadocious. Like I said, I noticed it was an old clip.
It was rather old,
and I know
it was very old because Rick was actually young in that thing, so it was very old.
Coming out of WCW back then, a lot of guys perhaps would have said a lot of different things about Booker T because I was rather braggadocious. I was one of the guys who was feeling myself. Even in that clip, Rick Steiner talked about me saying that I was top 5 in the business. And that's true. I used to say that. You know what I mean? I used to tick a lot of guys off. Guys like, probably William Regal. He might have been one of the guys who was, ticked off at me back then. Fit Finley, he's probably one of the guys who was, didn't take too kindly to me saying something like that. Rick Steiner, he may have been one of the guys as well, but that was just me, and that's just what I thought of myself back then.
Yeah. So again, to shoot Rick a little bail, it was a long time ago, but I wanted to bring it up really to clear up anything about you politicking, because it's just never something I've heard you do before.
I've never been one of the guys to politic. I've never, talked to any of the writers once and said, hey, why don't we go this route with me? Or, hey, here's a good idea. I've never did that once. Literally, I've never did it once. Zero. times. I've done that throughout my wrestling career. I've never had to politic. I was always talent. I was always, you know, the guy that you can go to in the locker room and count on to go out and did. No matter whether it was a stick, shovel, another man standing across, it was going to be some good stuff. You know, so for me, man, I never politicked, never. So just to get that out there, you know what? I'm not even mad at Rick for, you know, because like I said, that was a long time ago, and a lot of people probably thought a lot of things about me coming out of WCW because I talked a lot. I talked a whole lot. Yeah, but I could back it up. I could back it up.
Right.
You know, I could back it up in the ring, in the locker room, anywhere.
Huh.
No doubt. Seriously.
Whoa, he just throwing the locker room in there? Jeez. AJ3 Super Chat says, I guess WCW reunion is out of the picture. Keep up the good work. Thank you very much. Let's see. Carlos Bravo says, what did Rick and Booker say? Well, this was about the video I did about a week, was about 2 weeks ago now, where on the internet there was a video floating around from Rick Steiner saying that Booker T went to the NAACP and played politics, and that's why he became the Black World Champion in WCW. So what we just listened to was Booker T deny it, that he didn't do it. But in my video, I never mentioned that Booker T did it. What I said was there were other black wrestlers, but the thing was kicked off by Sonny Ono, who began the lawsuits in the late 90s or the early 2000s, thereabouts, when he noticed that the Japanese wrestlers and the luchadors were being mistreated in WCW once Vince Russo came in. And Vince Russo was very loudly biased against the Mexicans and the Japanese wrestlers, even completely flipping the cruiserweight division. And other people have noticed this too, because Sonny Ono was not just making shit up. He said, like, you went from Psychosis and Juventud Guerrera to 3 Count, you know, and like that was almost on a dime, that how that change happened. And I think, hey, it's nice to get some fresh blood. I mean, Psychosis had been there since 97. And, you know, now it's 2-3 years later. Of course, you're going to have some young guys in it. But it went from having mostly Mexicans to not having any Mexicans at all. And having, you know, the only Asians were, what was the Asian group that those guys were in? Akio and all those guys. Young Dragons, I think they were called in WCW. So, but it wasn't, it was Sonny Ono and it was Conan and it was Hardbody Harrison. And I think even Ahmed Johnson under his real name was involved with that. There was a bunch of other people. There was some black dudes who were involved with it too, but Booker T wasn't one of them. And Rick Steiner, you know, thought that it was, and threw Booker T under the bus in this old shoot interview that started floating around. Everybody started calling Rick Steiner a racist, but in reality, it has some validity to it because even in the lawsuit, they mentioned that Ranger Ross filed an EEOC complaint in 1992 about there not being any blacks in leadership positions in WCW, and they ended up making Ron Simmons the world champion. And so I just said, ipso facto, if that is true, and it likely is, and it also involves Bill Watts, and I know Bill Watts liked pushing black wrestlers, and he did so in Mid-South, and he wanted to have another Junkyard Dog, and that was his thing, especially as a Southern promoter. You know, having a strong black male character, despite the fact that everybody thinks Bill Watts is like incredibly racist, even though Bill Watts is more libertarian than anything. He's just sort of individual freedom. I should be able to be biased or racist if I want to, but it doesn't necessarily show that he wants to be. That's really what got him kicked out of WCW. But anyway, Bill Watts made some very public comments that ended up getting him canned from WCW. But people thought that that was the reason why Ranger Ross filed the EEOC complaint. I have not followed those dots myself. So I'm just throwing the thing out there. It might be jumbled up where something might have happened before something else. But ultimately, Bill Watts made some comments about blacks that, you shouldn't have to push them if you don't want to. You should have to hire people if you don't want to, that kind of thing. And they went to Hank Aaron, who at the time was a big shot in Turner, and got Bill Watts removed. But Bill Watts, it was his idea to put the title on Ron Simmons. And, from that point on, Bill Watts was noted as being a racist, even though Bill Watts was the only wrestling promoter in the 80s before affirmative action and the rest of that crap crept into the wrestling business that was pushing black wrestling talent in a mostly black wrestling city. And he brought that same concept to WCW. So, whatever. In any event. Russo was super against anything old. Well, it wasn't really that. He even talked about it in his book, that his problem with the Mexicans is that they couldn't speak English and they wore masks, which is the exact same thing Eric Bischoff said. The difference being Eric Bischoff actually pushed the Mexicans. He didn't push them far, but he at least featured them. Vince Russo took them off the air. So, of course, they filed a lawsuit. And Conan's just, he was just going on with the joyride. But it was Sonny Ono's idea to file the lawsuit because he was offended by some, they made like a fake Chinese restaurant menu or something like that they filed in the lawsuit. It was like really corny, very Vince Russo thing. So there was a lot of stuff going on with that. But it was mostly Sonny Ono's idea. And a bunch of other people piggybacked. And it went on for a while because then Thunderbolt Patterson and Hardwork Harrison and all those guys jumped in with the lawsuit on the black side. So, but yeah, they definitely flipped the cruiserweight division in late stage WCW to the point where it was unrecognizable just a few years before. And those guys were not like they crept up the card. Most of them fell off television completely. It's not like Psychosis went from being a cruiserweight guy to being like the United States champion. He went from being cruiserweight champion and in the mix to not being on TV at all. Like just not being used at all. Same thing with like Hoovy. Until he came up with the Juice thing, he wasn't really being used much at all outside of the cruiserweight division. A lot of the other guys like Super Callow, the Ultimo Dragon, those guys basically fucking disappeared. And you can just watch WCW and just look at it occur in real time. When Bischoff started losing control of the book, you started seeing white boys take over the cruiserweight division. And there's nothing wrong with that, except the fact that the guys who were mainstays in that division disappeared. It's not like you just added the white guys and everybody else was the same. It's like those guys vanished. And then it was Kidman and Gregory Helms, and it was a bunch of other guys too that just came in, and they basically started doing white boy lucha in WCW. That would trickle over to TNA. when TNA showed up, they started doing white boy lucha. But that's Vince Russo's fault. The reason they ended up getting sued is because Vince Russo was being stupid. He went on like a podcast or some kind of interview and was talking about being an American and not caring about Japanese people and not caring about Mexicans and stuff like that. And that really got the lawsuit popping. And from there, the black lawsuit was mostly there were no blacks in positions of leadership, and that Terry Taylor, Vince Russo, Eric Bischoff were all racists. The power plant was racist. That would be Jody Hamilton, who ended up running WWE's developmental Deep South Wrestling for a while, which ended up being a huge pit of lawsuits and people complaining. I should do another video on that. I really should. Because when you look, I did a video on Deep South Wrestling, the WWE developmental territory. And there's a lot of complaints that came out of that place. I didn't see any race complaints, though. A lot of it was basically just people being very inappropriate. of course, it gets extra attention because Kenny Omega quit Deep South. But to know that Jody Hamilton created one of the first wrestling developmental territories for WCW, and then that gave birth to the Power Plant. And then once WCW was gone, it was essentially converted to Deep South Wrestling after a little while. And then it was completely wiped out once WWE got rid of Deep South. But that's where a lot of the complaints against Hugh Morris started to come out. That's where you had the infamous Jelly Donut situation, where I think some guy, what was it, like Luke Gallows twerked on Zack Ryder with a donut on his face or something like that. It was just insane stuff going on. And Luchasaurus writing a letter complaining that they was, being verbally harassed and, being cussed out and all this kind of crazy shit. So there's a lot that goes into this. And I didn't know about how bad the power plant was when I made that video. Or at least the perception of how bad the power plant was. But it was clear that Batista was in the power plant. He hated it. But Goldberg was also in the power plant and he liked it. And DDP has never said anything negative about the power plant. And he was down there too. So it's just one of those things where some guys liked it, some guys didn't, which is pretty much everything and everywhere. So that's how it is. So, I really don't have anything else to discuss, really. That was kind of it. I just wanted everybody to hear that Booker T did go on record and deny it, even though we know he's going to deny it, because I couldn't find his name in anything. So why would he say, yeah, I was involved with that? And he clearly wasn't, because if he was, his name would have been on it. So I'm looking at my tablet, right? And very oddly, it says 13 people watching. But that's weird because on StreamYard, I'm looking and it says 54 people watching. So I'm guessing it's a collection of Twitter and is that what I'm looking at? Because I'm trying to figure out why the numbers are so different. I don't get that at all. But then again, I don't really care. Most people look at these things on replay. They don't catch them live. So, there that goes. So I see 40 people. Yeah, it's a combination. It's 40 on Twitter, 13 on YouTube. Okay, not bad. I figured out how this works, y'all. Okay, so that's really all I had. So to wrap things up a little bit, Vince McMahon is under federal investigation, likely for some kind of securities fraud, tied into the hush money scandal from 2 years ago. The Department of Justice has been looking into Vince for 2 years, asking a bunch of questions. They've been they've taken like his phone, his computers, and all this kind of stuff in connection with the hush money scandal, with sex trafficking, all this kind of stuff. The United States District Attorneys, they asked Janelle Grant to pause her lawsuit. She granted that request. The WWE and Vince McMahon side had no comment thus far on the federal investigation. But the federal investigation, again, is a thing that's been going on for 2 years. There's Wall Street Journal articles about it from July of 2022. There's Salon articles and wrestling media articles from 2022. But I'm thinking everybody is just posting what they read and they're not really reading it and giving you any information. But the information is there's nothing to be had yet, other than if you look at the people involved, it's mostly people who involve themselves with financial crimes. And that's what they're looking into, likely, is financial crimes. So whether charges come or not, we just have to wait and see. That's just the nature of the beast. But Vince is not getting off the hook for anything. And I already said if he actually did it, throw him in jail. I don't care how old he is. But have some real legitimate evidence that he actually did something. Not just, he's friend of Trump, we're going to put him in prison. That's the wrong way to do things in, proper society. WG Phil says news got swamped by the Rekieta stuff. Yeah, that whole Nick Rekieta thing is embarrassing. It's an embarrassment. I'm still not well versed in it, but I know enough to know that people was talking about how his kids were unclean, not taking care of themselves, and there apparently was drugs in the house and all this kind of stuff. I'm like, man, he was living like like he lived in a trailer or something like that. Somebody even told me that he had white stuff on his nose on the live stream. I'm like, bro, he couldn't have been that brazen. Had he gone that far? Like, I looked at the one video where he was biting his finger. It's clearly he was drunk or something. But I didn't want to look too deep into it. But a lot of people are now starting to tear his life apart, which got to be very stressful. Like getting arrested is bad enough. Having all of the people from LawTube tear your life apart and go through your your house and all that kind of stuff, the state of your house, the state of your children, the state of your marriage, how you took some guy's wife, and your alcoholism and all that kind of shit. It's been a disaster, bro. It's sick. But now I will say this, and this is the only defense I'm going to offer for Nick Rekieta. I was cooking and taking care of my brothers when I was 12. Apparently, there's a 16-year-old in that house. At that point, when I was 16, I was taking care of pretty much the entire house by myself. Now, I can't say all 16-year-olds are the same, but I started making my own meals and cooking for like my mom and my brothers when I was like 11 or 12 years old. And I was often left alone with like young boys and young people. So what I heard about did not sound that bad. But then again, I didn't see them. I don't know how old the other children are. I don't know how active that 16-year-old is, where that 16-year-old was coming and going. I have no idea. And plus, that 16-year-old is still a kid, and he's still a minor, and they probably should not leave minors in the home unsupervised. Even though at 16, you should pretty much be able to go wherever you want, do whatever you want. I think people are being a little they're being a little bitchy with they talking about a teenager being in the house. It's like, come on. Every 16-year-old I knew was adult enough to wash their own ass, clean up behind themselves, and eat when they are hungry, and knew how to use a washing machine if you had one. I didn't have a washing machine growing up, but we figured it out. So that's all I'm gonna say on the nature of the kids. And the kids thing is really the only thing that bothered me. Him being into drugs and alcohol was kind of like him being a victim of his own success. He became incredibly successful. And again, people think that streaming is not a job. It's not as bad as what was that asshole talking about how hard streaming is? If you're streaming for 4, 5, 6 hours a day, that's a lot, bro. It's literally a lot. And maybe you shouldn't stream 4, 5, 6 hours a day. Maybe you go 2, 3 times a week, twice a week streaming and just do regular videos. I know that streaming probably brings in more money. And when you're following a trial, you want to follow the trial because that's more money. But you got to take some mental health time too. Take a break, because I think that's part of it is that he just snapped, So it's really weird. The washing machine was in the hallway where Nick was doing his orgies. Oh, hell. Oh, brother. All right, y'all. I'm trying not to get into this Nick Rekieta stuff, man. I want the guy to get his life together. Please clean up. Hopefully this him hitting rock bottom and he'll bounce back. They all do. They all hit rock bottom, but it's how you handle it. So hopefully he corrects himself and everything works out great. Hopefully his kids are okay. That's what I'm mostly concerned about. All the adults wanting to do adult stuff. I mean, it is what it is. What are my thoughts on? Oh yeah, that was Hassan. Yes, the fake communist. Oh, the fake commie. Oh, it's so hard to stream 4 hours a day. Like, yeah, it is. It sucks. Maybe you could like not do that. You and your rich daddy. Faggot. Triple H is not, he's not reinventing the wheel when it comes to Braun Breaker. He's keeping it simple. He's just going on there crushing guys, which is what it should be. Can't be that way for long because there does need to be some element of some layers to the character, but we'll get there. Okie dokie. So thank you guys for stopping by. I appreciate it. I'll talk to you guys later. Peace out.